The long road to happiness, a journey worth every step. Growing up, Anna had always dreamed of traveling the world, but life had a way of keeping her close to home. She lived in a small town with her mother, working 2 jobs to help support their household. While Anna loved her community, she often found herself daydreaming of far-off places, imagining all the beautiful sights, friendly people, and unique cultures out there waiting for her. Years went by and life brought its share of ups and downs. Anna faced financial struggles, heartbreaks, and moments of doubt, but through it all, she held on to her dream. She saved every extra penny she earned, no matter how small, and would occasionally treat herself to a travel magazine to keep her motivated. Her friends would sometimes tease her, saying, "You'll probably never leave this town," but Anna would just smile and say, "Day." Then, at 32, after more than a decade of saving and planning, Anna finally had enough to take her first trip abroad. She chose Italy, a country she'd fallen in love with through photos and stories. With her small suitcase and a heart full of hope, she set off on an adventure that would change her life. Italy was everything she'd imagined. Beautiful landscapes, warm locals, and delicious food. But it was more than the sights, it was the feeling of freedom and accomplishment that filled her. As she walked through the cobblestone streets of Florence, Anna felt a sense of belonging she'd never felt before. For the first time, she wasn't just daydreaming, she was living her dream. Anna returned home with countless memories, but she knew she wanted more. She continued to work and save, planning her next adventure. Over the years, she visited Spain, Japan, Peru, and even explored her own country with fresh eyes. Each trip brought new experiences, friendships, and lessons about resilience and gratitude. As she grew older, Anna became known as the world traveler in her town. She started giving talks at the local school, inspiring young people to chase their dreams, no matter how big or small. She would say, "You don't have to go far to find adventure, you just have to keep moving forward." In her late 60s, Anna looked back on her life with a heart full of joy. She had lived fully, overcoming every obstacle and turning every, maybe someday, into "I did it." Her journey was proof that dreams might take time, but with patience, hope, and hard work, they can become beautiful realities. From neighbor to family, how a small act of kindness changed everything. Tom was a reserved man in his 70s, living quietly in his little house at the end of the cul-de-sac. His wife had passed away a few years earlier, and his children lived states away, busy with their own families. Tom spent most of his days gardening, reading on his porch, or feeding the birds. The neighborhood knew him as the gentleman with the big heart, though he mostly kept to himself. One winter, a new family moved in next door. Young couple Sarah Mike with a lively 5-year-old boy named Leo. They quickly settled in, and little Leo seemed fascinated by his elderly neighbor. He'd always wave at Tom and shout, "He, Mr. Tom." Tom would smile and wave back, though he wasn't used to the high energy. One snowy December morning, while Tom was shoveling his driveway, Leo came bounding over, bundled up in a puffy jacket, hat, and mittens. "Can I help you, Mr. Tom?" he asked with a grin, holding his small toy shovel. Amused, Tom handed him a proper shovel, and together they worked side by side. It took a bit longer with Leo's help, but Tom enjoyed the company. Over the next few months, Leo became Tom's little shadow. He'd run over to say hi whenever he saw Tom in the yard, often bringing him drawings or small treasures he'd found. One spring day, Leo invited Tom to his 6th birthday party, insisting that Mr. Tom was part of the family now. Tom felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. As time passed, Sarah and Mike grew close to Tom too, inviting him to dinners and holidays. Tom, once lonely, now had family-like connections that filled his heart with joy. He became a kind of grandparent to Leo, attending his school plays, reading him stories, and sharing stories of his own youth. Years went by, and Leo grew older, but his bond with Tom only deepened. When Tom eventually passed away in his sleep, the whole neighborhood mourned, but none more so than Leo. At the memorial, Leo, now a young man, spoke with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Tom wasn't just a neighbor, he was my best friend, my family. He taught me kindness and patience and showed me how one small act can change a life." And for the rest of his life, Leo would tell the story of his Mr. Tom, the kind, quiet man next door who became a part of his heart forever. The perfect excuse. My younger brother, Tom, always has a unique way of getting out of things. One night, my mom asked him to go to bed early. He sighed dramatically and said, "I can't go to bed right now. I promised my teddy bear I'd stay up and read him a story." A mom laughed and asked why he couldn't just read it in bed. He replied with wide eyes, "Because he likes listening from the couch." It was hard to argue with that logic. Tom got his late night and a new storybook for his teddy. The Careful Wish Maker. One afternoon, I took my niece Ava to the park. She found a dandelion and asked me if she could make a wish. I said, Of course, go ahead. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, then opened them again without blowing the seeds. When I asked why she didn't make her wish, she replied, "I need to save it for a really important wish. I only get one a day, right?" A smart girl. She's always been wise beyond her years. Now, every time she finds a dandelion, she carefully considers if it's wish-worthy before making her decision. The Bookstore Bench. Every Saturday, Amelia spent her afternoons in her favorite corner of the local bookstore, a cozy little nook by the window. She'd bring her favorite books and sip on a warm cup of tea, enjoying a peaceful escape from her busy job as a nurse. The small bookstore was a second home to her, and the staff greeted her with smiles every time she walked in. One Saturday, Amelia noticed an elderly man sitting on the bench across from her usual spot. He was reading intently with a stack of worn books beside him. His face was familiar, but she couldn't quite place him. She watched as he pulled out a small, leather-bound journal and started jotting down notes. Intrigued, Amelia struck up a conversation. "Are you researching something special?" she asked with a warm smile. The man, who introduced himself as Mr. Grant, explained that he had a passion for family history and had been tracing his family tree for years. He was writing a memoir to pass down to his grandchildren, a legacy of stories from his past. Week after week, Amelia would find Mr. Grant in the bookstore, always at the same spot. Their chats became a weekly tradition, and soon they were sharing more than just stories about books. Mr. Grant spoke of his youth, his late wife, and his travels. In turn, Amelia shared her dreams, her love of nursing, and her wish to travel the world one day. They became unlikely friends, two people from different generations bound by their love of storytelling. One day, Mr. Grant arrived with a small, wrapped gift. "For all the kindness you've shown me," he said, handing it to her with a shy smile. Amelia unwrapped it to find his leather journal. He had decided to gift her his memoir, filled with stories as life, advice, and reflections on happiness. A few months later, Mr. Grant passed away peacefully, leaving behind his life's work and his friendship with Amelia. She cherished that journal, reading it often, feeling as though her friend was still with her. Inspired by his words, Amelia saved up to visit the places he had spoken of: Paris, London, and Rome, and even began journaling her own travels. Years later, Amelia passed that same journal on to her own niece, adding her own stories to the pages. The book continued to grow, becoming a treasured family heirloom, a testament to a friendship that started on a bookstore bench and blossomed into a legacy of love, stories, and dreams fulfilled. The free lemonade stand. My friend's kid, Mia, set up a lemonade stand in the front yard. But instead of selling it, she put up a big sign that said, "Free lemonade, just tell me a joke." When I asked her why she was giving it away for free, she explained, "I just want people to make me laugh." By the end of the day, she'd heard more jokes than she could count and was surrounded by friends who came back over and over just to see her smile. It was the best business idea I'd ever seen. The healthy snack plan. My daughter Emma, who's 7, loves chips, but I told her we should try more fruits and veggies. So one afternoon, she walked into the kitchen with a bag of chips and a banana. With the most innocent face, she said, "Mom, I'm being healthy. I'm eating my chips with a banana." She then proceeded to alternate between bites of banana and chips, beaming proudly. Technically, she was having a balanced snack, just not in the way I'd imagined. The little free library that brought a neighborhood together. When Sarah moved into her new neighborhood, she didn't know anyone. She was a quiet, bookish woman who preferred spending her weekends curled up with a novel rather than going out. One summer evening, inspired by something she saw online, she decided to set up a little free library outside her house. A small wooden box filled with books that people could take and leave as they pleased. At first, she wasn't sure if anyone would use it. But within days, she noticed a few books missing and new ones added. One morning, she found a handwritten note tucked inside the library. "Thank you for this. I've been wanting to read more but didn't have the chance to buy new books." The library became a small but steady attraction on her street. People of all ages came by, dropping off books they loved, picking up new ones, and even leaving notes to recommend their favorite reads. Soon, Sarah started seeing familiar faces regularly. One young mother, Laura, would bring her 2 kids every week to pick a new children's book. A retired teacher, Mr. Thompson, often stopped by to leave classics he'd kept from his teaching days. Over time, they all began chatting with Sarah, sharing stories about their lives and the books they'd chosen. One day, Laura invited Sarah over for coffee, introducing her to more neighbors. From that simple invitation, a new tradition was born: monthly neighborhood book swaps. Everyone would gather in Sarah's yard, bringing books, snacks, and folding chairs. People shared book recommendations, stories about their families, and even swapped gardening tips. Sarah, who had once felt so alone, found herself surrounded by friends who cared. When her birthday came around, the neighborhood surprised her with a party, complete with a cake decorated with little books and a banner that read, "To our favorite librarian." The little free library that started as a quiet idea blossomed into a gathering place that connected an entire community. What Sarah had intended as a small gesture of kindness became the heart of the neighborhood. A place where stories were shared, friendships were formed, and people felt they belonged. The unexpected reunion at the shelter. Lily had always loved animals, so when she found herself with some extra time one weekend, she decided to volunteer at her local animal shelter. She'd just come through a rough breakup and thought helping out with animals might be a good way to lift her spirits. As she walked into the shelter for the first time, she was greeted by rows of kennels filled with dogs and cats, each one with a story and a hope for a new home. As she made her way down the aisle, she spotted a dog in the last kennel, a large mixed breed with a golden brown coat and big, expressive eyes. His name tag read Buddy. Lily gasped. He looked just like her family's dog from childhood, Rocky, who had passed away years ago. The resemblance was so striking that it took her breath away. She approached Buddy's kennel and knelt down. "Hey there, Buddy," she whispered. Buddy's tail started wagging, and he tilted his head as if he recognized her. She felt an instant connection with him and spent the entire afternoon with Buddy, walking and playing, and just sitting together. When it came time to leave, she promised she'd be back the next day. For the next few weeks, Lily visited Buddy almost every day, falling in love with his playful spirit and gentle nature. Each time she left, it became harder to say goodbye. She knew adopting him would be a huge commitment, but the idea of bringing him home started to feel more and more right. One afternoon, as she was getting ready to leave, a shelter worker approached her. "I see you've taken quite a liking to Buddy," she said with a smile. Lily nodded, admitting she was thinking of adopting him. The worker then told her Buddy's story, how he'd been found wandering near the same neighborhood where Lily grew up. "He was brought here around the same time you first started volunteering," the worker added. It seemed like fate. After a few more days of consideration, Lily adopted Buddy, bringing him home to start a new chapter together. The shelter staff sent her a photo of Buddy when he'd first arrived, and in the background, she spotted something familiar. A worn-out collar she'd never noticed before, with a faint R. It felt like a sign that Rocky had brought her to Buddy, and she knew she'd found exactly who she was meant to. Buddy quickly became her best friend and helped her through the tough days, filling her life with love and laughter. In helping him find a home, she found the comfort and companionship she didn't realize she needed, thanks to an unexpected reunion at the shelter.